Hello and welcome to Shalom, y'all, a podcast for young adults who are in or are looking towards Torah. Joining me today is Miss Charity Chapman. Say hi, Miss Charity.
Hey!
Okay, so today we're going to be talking about what a Proverbs 31 woman is, or a woman of valor. Just really what a biblical wife should look like, and the term submit. In the Bible, it says to submit to your husband, and I've always struggled with this. I know that a few of my friends and family have struggled with this word. So today we're just going to go over what the true meaning of submit is and how to do it biblically. We're going to start in Proverbs 31, of course, 10 through 31. This passage talks about what a woman should be in Yahweh. Okay, so I'm not going to, at this time, read all of Proverbs 31, 10 through 31, just because it's a little long and I don't want to be monotonous, but I have here listed a few of the things that it says for a woman to be like. What I have listed here is that this woman should be more valuable than rubies. Her husband trusts her, and he lacks nothing in value. She brings her husband good and no harm. She works hard at her job to provide for her family. She gives to the poor and in need. She makes her own clothing. Her husband is well respected. She has strength and dignity. She laughs at the days to come, which is hilarious because I would love to laugh at the days to come and not look at them with fear. Every word she speaks is a lesson of kindness and is full of wisdom. She watches over her household. She's not lazy and idle. Big struggle with that one. Her family blesses and praises her, and she is to get back her fruits of her labor. So whatever she works for, you're supposed to give back to her. And I'm going to say one of these verses because I really like it. It is verse 30 that says, "Charm is deceitful and beauty is vain, but a woman who fears Adonai will be praised." What I like about verse 30 is that sometimes societal standards will make you think that beauty is everything. And trying to get perfect body weight, the perfect makeup, the perfect clothes, it's all a little bit overwhelming. But in this verse it says that Adonai does not care about that. Yes, you should present yourself in a good way and a modest way, but Adonai praises this woman because she fears him.
Right.
So, you got anything to add on that one?
Yeah, so throughout all of those verses, it is, speaking of her character and who she is in Yahweh, like the things that she does. And we know, actions are so important, especially in following Torah. We know that our actions are more important than, what we look like, or really even, words that we say are so important. But, the way that we act shows what we truly believe.
Mm-hmm. Oh, yeah. Actions speak louder than words.
Yeah.
Isn't that what they always say?
And she is, through all of these verses, she's given example after example of, her goodness. And not just her goodness, but the goodness that Yahweh has given to her through his own light and through, the things that she has in him. Mm-hmm. And, none of those things are about her own might, but they're through him. And that is, what makes a person truly beautiful. And it doesn't, I think she cares for herself. I think that it's important to, to be desirable for your husband. I think that it's important to take care of yourself and have good hygiene so that you can have a long life. Mm-hmm. But I don't think
pretty good to brush your teeth.
Yeah. Shower every once in a while. But it doesn't obviously say just that she does those things, but we can pretty much gather by how discerning she is and how, wise she is, and that she is lovely, that she does take care of herself, and she does care about clothing. It speaks of her clothing and that her coverings are luxurious, and that linen, she wears linen. Linen is really hard to come by. It's a process to be created. Mm-hmm. It's made from flax, and it takes a while to create linen. I couldn't imagine back in those days what it would take to make that. But oof. Yeah, so that she cares. She cares how she's presented, and not just her, but how her children and how her husband are presented. Mm-hmm. But those aren't her main concerns. Her main concerns are, not being lazy, working for her family, caring for them. In verse 19, it says 15. It says she rises while it is still night and provides food for her household and portions for her servant girls. That shows you, I've heard before that rises doesn't actually mean like get up out of bed, but like rises from a kneeling position. So where she has spent time with Yahweh in prayer. Because right after that, it says she provides food for her household and portions for her servant girls. And portions, you and you probably do, consider that to be food as well.
Mm-hmm.
But it's actually speaking of the law, like a Torah portion, or the portion of whatever I can...
So say that again.
So it says, she rises while it is still night and provides food for her household and portions for her servant girls. And
so she teaches her family.
Yeah, like
I didn't know that. Huh.
Her maidens, and is also another translation of the word servant girls there, is her maidens, which is just women younger than she is. And she teaches them with portions from what we would consider the Torah.
Mm-hmm.
A portion is a law, an ordinance, a word from Torah. And here, like a side note, it says, you will be given according to your present need, never all 613 laws once to obey 100% now and forever. So, as in, like, whatever it is that you're going through, that she would provide that portion, like, to help them out,
Yeah. Yeah, there's sometimes where Mama will, more along these days, because we've gotten into Torah, she'll come to me with, well, if I'm going through something, or if I have a problem, she'll kind of direct me, say, well, what does the Bible say about that?
Mm.
And Megan does that a lot to me, too. She'll push me towards a Bible verse or something, and usually it does have the answers.
Yeah.
So if a wife and a mother will give their kids scripture that is full of answers to their kids so that they can, and their servants, that they can actually work with it and they can do it biblically, I think that's so good, because, I mean, some people will think that a woman can't teach. And clearly I have a podcast where I teach other kids my age, and it's always bothered me that some people think that a woman is absolutely not to teach. But it says that she teaches her kids.
Mm-hmm.
And those are the future teachers.
Right, yeah.
You teach a kid, you teach a boy that will grow up and to become a teacher or preacher. Where did he get that knowledge? He got it from Yahweh, but he did it through you as the mother. Right, and that's always so cool that they have that ability to bring up the offspring and Yahweh's future warriors,
Right, exactly, yeah. I think that's so important, and I think that, not to get political, but I think that this whole, like, feminism movement is pulling women out of homes.
Yeah.
And, in this Proverbs 31, 10 through 31, it says, that she has a job.
Mm-hmm.
But that doesn't mean that her home isn't lacking anything in value. And I think that that's important to note, because it takes her discernment. And it says that she has to discern whether or not she buys this field and plants a vineyard.
Mm-hmm.
I think that if Yahweh leads you into a business while you have children, I think that is fine, and you should do that work with all of your heart, as scripture tells us to, whatsoever we do it heartily as to Yahweh and not to men. But I think that does not come first ever.
Oh yeah,
I mean,
your children and leading them in Yahweh comes first. Yahweh comes first, and that kind of speaks through you. If you're not around all the time, and there's no one around.
Someone is raising your children.
Someone's raising your kids.
Not. Yeah.
And whether that be a babysitter or a nanny that may not have the same standards as you or may not be in Torah, that's kind of scary.
Yeah.
Especially me, who was raised in public school.
Mm-hmm.
I did most of my learning, including housely things, including life things from school.
Right.
And that scares me sometimes because I have those backgrounds. And my deepest fear lately has been, if I find a guy who's more Torah than me, I am the more worldly one, and I'm scared of him seeing these things in me and abandoning me. And I'm working, and I'm trying to lead myself into this Proverbs 31 person, but it is extremely difficult when I have a background in public school. I'm not pushing that as, like, my excuse,
Right.
But there are some things in my life that I haven't fully pulled out. I've done a lot. I've done a lot in taking steps towards more faithfulness and just trying to get closer to the Bible and this Proverbs 31 woman, but at the same time, it really is scary to me that I have been brought up in a world, including the feminism movement.
Yeah, right.
I see those things in me. From what I've learned in the world, I'm supposed to say, I'm me, you don't get to control me, and everything, and I'm trying to work that out of my head.
Yeah.
You see what I mean?
Yeah, I know exactly what you mean. So, a fruit of the Spirit is meekness. And Yahweh loves a meek-hearted person.
Mm-hmm.
And, meek means quiet, gentle, submissive. And I think that, that is exactly opposite of what is going on in the world right now.
Mm-hmm.
Like, women are encouraged to be, like, mouthy. They're encouraged to, fight and be, like, boisterous and loud and fun. And, like, you can still be fun and be meek.
Yeah.
Yeah,
that's true.
But those aren't...
It's a balance. And it's a difficult way to balance, especially if you're just starting out in Torah and you're just starting out looking for a future guy, or you're trying to figure out your life at this point. I know that you guys, as married people, and as you're a little bit older than me, you've not figured out everything, but you've figured out a lot of things that I haven't yet. And I know you have your own struggles, but it's a lot.
It is a lot.
That's why I come to you, and that's why I come to the other ladies of the fellowship, because I want to know. And I think that this Proverbs 31 woman, if I were her, would go to her teachers and go to other people that know more, that they're not too proud to come to people to ask for questions, ask for answers to their questions. And that's another reason why I had you on, and that's why I had Megan and Sarah, just because they're a little bit older than me, just to take me in the right direction, and in the same way, leading them towards answering these questions themselves.
Yeah. And it's, you were saying, like, you're worried that, like, you're not gonna, like, coming out of the pre-Torah life that you had, it's a sanctification process. Yahweh takes us and sees a heart that is willing to follow him wholeheartedly, and he is, takes that heart of stone and turns it into flesh, and he strips things away, and it's painful, but he is refining us. I mean, he's making us as pure gold, and to look like pure gold is to look like Yeshua, and it's not easy. It's not an easy process, especially being raised in the world, and becoming the Proverbs 31 woman, I don't think is ever fully possible at the same time. So,
well, I mean, even being completely perfect is impossible. Right. You just have to get as close as you can.
Yeah, she is definitely what we, or, any Bible believer would consider the perfect woman. And I'm sure most men would think that too.
I definitely think that they would think that's the perfect woman for them.
But, like, there are times that I'm great at, like, speaking to my kids with Torah. And, like, leading them to Torah and leading them, to scripture whenever, like, there's problems, and praying with them, like, as problems arise. There's times whenever I'm great at that. But I may be failing at cooking every meal super healthy. Or I may be failing at, I don't know, there's a billion things. Or, like, but I'm never, like, perfect at all of them at the same time.
No one is. And
even whenever, like Ruth, for example, her and Boaz, when she was considered this woman of valor. But she wasn't all of the Proverbs 31 woman at the time, but she was considered the Proverbs 31 woman.
Because she got close.
Right.
And she tried to live her life like it.
And you can do you can do all of them. You just can't do all of them at the same time. And I think that striving for that and following Yahweh, like, in what he, like, in his heart for the woman to be, for a woman of Yahweh, like, what she is supposed to look like, striving for that and continually getting better at that, and I think is the only way to ever get close to being is,
That's the same thing with, like, following his commandments and everything. You're never going to be perfect. But if God sees you, if Yahweh sees you trying to do his ways and trying to learn the feasts and festivals, trying not to eat pork, all these things that we've come to learn and everything, I believe that he doesn't, even if we're wrong, or even if we're going down and getting too technical with it, he can still see you're trying.
Yeah.
I gave you my word. I gave you this Proverbs 31 example to look at, and you've been trying to be like her, that he's gonna be like, good job.
Yeah. Well, that's the goal anyway.
Is the goal. Okay, so I was looking at some verses about modesty, and I ran across 1 Timothy 2:8 through, I believe it's 15. So actually it starts at 9. It says, "Likewise, women are to adorn themselves in appropriate clothing, with modesty and sound judgment, not in seductive hairstyles and gold or pearls or costly clothing, but what is suitable for women, claiming godliness through good deeds. Let a woman receive training in a quiet demeanor with complete respect for order. But I do not allow a woman to train or dictate to a man, but to be in a quiet demeanor. For Adam was first formed, then Eve. Also Adam was not deceived, but the woman, being deceived, she fell into transgression. Nevertheless, she will be sustained through childbearing if they continue in faithfulness and love and holiness with sound judgment." So all of this just saying that she's to be submissive, she's to be modest, and she's supposed to be quiet, which are all the things that feminism these days are not.
Right. And I don't think it just necessarily means that she can't talk. So it says, "I do not allow a woman to train or dictate a man, but to be in quiet demeanor." I think that is, it doesn't say her husband, which, I mean, she shouldn't do that to her husband either. But, like,
Definitely not.
Feminism would say, like, you can put a man in his place. It's totally fine. Why would you not if he's doing the wrong thing? But meekness and, the spirit of meekness tells us, like, why? Like, what? Like, is it appropriate to do that? No. I mean, like, it's just going to cause drama. We're supposed to be at peace.
Yeah.
I think that, as far as modesty is concerned, like, again, it's not just the clothing that she wears, which I think, your clothing should point to Yahweh. It should, you should be approachable and approachable in, like, a good way. Like, I don't mean, because you could wear head to toe clothing and, like, dress in all black and, like, chains and stuff and be modest technically, but that isn't that isn't approachable. That isn't saying, hey, I'm a male or a female of Yahweh. It's also in her demeanor and how she carries herself, and you're not going to see a woman fighting a man or yelling at a man or fussing at him and trying to teach him what's right and think, oh, she is, very level-headed. Yeah. She's got her life together.
Yeah. It's in what she says. It's in everything that she does.
Actions, again, are so important.
Okay, so we've discussed what a biblical woman is. And leading into that is a biblical wife. And I have a few verses here that pretty much says what a wife is to be. In Genesis 2:24, it says, "This is why a man leaves his father and his mother and clings to his wife, because they are one flesh." And I read somewhere that it says, if you're one flesh and one person, you do not want to disrespect your other half. Everything you do should be reflected on by your husband. If you go out and you do something really bad, that comes back on your husband. Or it comes back on your wife. And in the same way, you don't go out and say bad things about your husband to other people because you're one flesh. Because you take the guy's last name and what you do in life and just everything should be good and should lift his name up.
Right, exactly. I think that, marriage, you take your husband's last name. So, I'm no longer Charity Shea, I'm Charity Chapman. And so people, will often be like, oh, are you Tyler Chapman's wife? And they, not saying that they know me because I'm his wife, but they know him and then they see me and then they're like, oh, yeah, well, I know him. So, I know you too. If they, were to see me acting in a way that is other than what my husband preaches or what my husband teaches or what he is trying to do as a man of Yahweh, then they're going to be like,
it's a hypocrite.
Yeah, this man does not have his house in order and it is going to look really, really bad on him. So your garment in scripture, and obviously your garment, if you hear the word garment, you think clothing, right? It's what you're wearing. Names are what you wear. You wear your name, everywhere you go, but you also wear the name, like I wear the name of Yahweh. I wear the name of Yeshua. I wear the name of my husband. And I know that the things that I do should reflect those names and the things I say, of course, as well. But your name is who you are and it reflects on who they are. I would hate more than anything to have to see Yahweh and be like, you know what? Yeah, I was wearing Yeshua's name whenever I did that. Whenever I broke that law. Gosh, ouch.
Yeah, that one's a pretty bad way.
Yeah. I was wearing your name and, this is where you caught me or this is what I was doing or I don't know. I just can't none of us are perfect. And I think thinking of that, obviously he sees everything and he knows everything and we will have to stand before him one day. Obviously we know that we will have to answer for our actions. And I think that that's something to consider, that we should be wearing his name, not just, for what it looks like for others, as, what I'm saying? Not for the sake of what other people may think of us.
Yeah.
But you would never want to bring dishonor to such a holy name. We should be putting on clothing of righteousness and wearing that righteousness and proudly as, children of Yahweh. And as a married wife, you should be proud of your husband. And even in Proverbs 31, it says that her husband is respected at the city gates. And, you have to think that that is because she is encouraging him. She's always pushing him to do the right thing. And and I don't want to say pushing as in she's over him, but encouraging
she's
him and helping him.
Yeah.
Right, exactly.
Keeping him in check in a way. So,
Yeah.
if he's doing it right, he should come to his wife with all the things that in his life and ask her about it, and she's to give a Yahweh-led answer. So, it's not exactly pushing in the harsh connotation that it is. It's more like a nudge in the right direction of what would Yahweh do.
Right.
Because sometimes when you get into, and this is for me too, when you get into kind of that you have your own opinion and you're sticking by that opinion or you're mad at someone, you're not thinking straight. Exactly. And I think that the wife and even the husband sometimes will step in and be that neutral party and be like, well, this is what Yahweh says. Yeah. And this is what you're doing right now, so we need to fix this.
Yeah, that's interchangeable. It works both ways.
Oh, yeah.
We both
definitely need that for a husband.
Yeah. We both need some of that, hey, what are you doing? You're not doing the right thing. And, obviously all in the name of what Yahweh says is right and wrong and not what we, believe is right and wrong as far as personal opinion. Yeah.
Okay. So I have 3 other verses. They are kind of miscellaneous verses about a wife. Proverbs 18:22 says, "Whoever finds a wife finds good and receives favor from Adonai." Proverbs 19:14 says, "House and wealth are an inheritance from fathers, but a prudent wife is from Adonai." And then Proverbs 12:4 says, "A virtuous wife is her husband's crown, but a dishonoring one is like rottenness in his bones." Mm-hmm. And that one is kind of scary because rottenness in your bones takes your foundation. Yeah. In your body. If you have rottenness or a disease in your bones, you have nothing to stand on. Just like if you don't have Torah and you don't have his commandments, you're going to fail immediately. Mm-hmm. And having that ability to kind of cripple your husband is scary. So you should, I would want to strive to be his version of the Proverbs 31 woman, the perfect woman, because I do not want to bring, just like I don't want to be a false prophet in my teachings to people, I don't want to bring bad things to other people, especially my husband.
Especially the man who is supposed to lead you.
Exactly.
Yeah. Like, hello, we're all going down. So, in Proverbs 14:1, it says, "A wise woman builds her house, but a foolish one tears it down with her own hands."
Mm-hmm.
I mean, and I think we're either doing one or the other at all times, you know, the kind of words that we say or the actions that we do, whether they be, you know, nice or, you know, not so nice, or maybe even if it's unintentional, of course. I would never, like, try to be mean. But I think that we're always doing one of those things. Like, our actions are always leading, like, one way or the other. And yeah, why would you want to tear your own house down? That's so sad to me to think that, like, I could be responsible for, you know, like, my children not having a family, or, you know, and I mean, it happens.
Or, like, there's some households that I'll see that they're like, why have my children gone astray? Why have I've been teaching good and everything, and they've still gone away? But when you look at their life, you can see them either bad-mouthing their husband or doing things, maybe getting away from their husband and not providing like they should. And you can see how the ball starts rolling, the butterfly effect of, if you're not taking care of your household and if you're not respecting your husband, it can kind of lead to some pretty bad things. And of course, I don't want that in my future, so I'm striving to get that in my head now by talking to you and talking to other people about it. And on that note, in Colossians 3:18, it says, "Wives, submit yourself to your husbands as is fitting to the Lord. In any case, let each of you love his own wife as himself, and let the wife respect her." The word submit. I struggle with this word because from the connotation that I've been brought up, not by my parents, but by society and everything, this has been shown in a really bad light, in a really bad connotation. Submit in my brain at the moment equals slave.
Right.
Yeah. And I've been searching and I've been researching on this word to find if it actually means that, to see if I'm supposed to be this, like, thoughtless slave to my husband, because I don't want to be.
Right.
It sounds kind of sad, and it kind of pulls me away from marriage a little bit. It's gotten me a little bit off of the track of marriage. In Titus 2:4-5 and Ephesians 5:23-24, it also says submit. And going through the Blue Letter Bible, so the Greek version of the New Testament, going back to the roots, all three of the verses that I have listed, and you can look up for yourself, the submit is the same exact word. And forgive me if I say this wrong, it is hupatso, which means to place or rank under, to subject, or to obey. None of that says slave to me.
Right.
That says respect. It says obey. And even in the Ephesians verse, it says, "For the husband is the head of the wife, as Messiah also is head of his community." And it says that Messiah's community is to submit to him just as the wife submit to their husbands. So I know that you have a lot to say on this subject, so I'm going to let you go ahead and go through with it, because I really want your opinion on these things and from what you've learned over the years.
Okay, so I'm a very hard-headed person by nature. I like to be independent. I would really, you know, if I had thought that the word meant slave, I probably would have been a little bit more hesitant as well. I'm a little more harsh on this subject because I grew up a lot around my grandparents, and my grandma worked as a nurse. Like, she worked, 12-hour shifts, and my grandpa had, like, a bunch of, like, side businesses, and he ran, like, a small farm. But my grandma would get off of her shift and make sure my grandpa had everything he needed. She would bring him his plate, whether he be sitting at the couch or at the table. Like, she would bring his plate to him
Oh, this is a side note for any listeners. We are at the Chapman's house, and they have a bunch of great kids. So if you hear anybody in the background, it's probably Asher. He's running around. Okay, anyways, let's get back to it.
So, I witnessed that a lot growing up. I witnessed that she was tired. Obviously, she'd been on her feet taking care of people who needed her all night. But she always made sure that he had what he needed. Mm-hmm. And she didn't complain. She wasn't, fussy about it. Although I'm sure she wanted to be. And I'm, sometimes she was in a bad mood. But she was never, hateful towards him. She was never oh, well, you just get up and get it yourself. So because I had that growing up and I had witnessed those things, I do have more of a traditional view on submissiveness than this, new age, feminism movement that is, if you have a husband, you are being put under someone, you're being put under someone else's rule.
Mm-hmm. It's different times.
Yeah. And I just want to say for you and for literally everyone else who thinks that, specifically for people who are followers of Yahweh, you have to remember that the husband that you will be submitting to is someone that you choose, someone that you have prayed for and that Yahweh will bless you with. And it will be someone who is a follower of Yahweh as well. Mm-hmm. Hopefully. I mean, I would pray that, if that man that you choose and who also chooses you and he have a good relationship, and then one day you decide to get married and he is a man of Yahweh, and you can trust that he is going to lead you with the words of the Father and with the Ruach and in him, then you don't have to worry. You know the scripture yourself. You always have that. You always have the Ruach HaKodesh. You always have scripture. Mm-hmm. I think that comes into checks and balances there in that, marital husband-wife situation. But as far as having a husband who you trust is so valuable. I know it talks about finding a woman who is, is valuable, but
you also have to find a husband that's valuable too. And in other ways though.
Yeah. And if he loves you as he is called to do, husbands are called to love their wives. I don't know if you know that. It never says wives love your husbands.
Yeah, it's not just one way.
Right. It says
they have their own things. It says that they're supposed to respect the wife, to take care of her, put a roof over her head. And sometimes I can forget that because it mostly seems like it's a one-way thing of wives submit to your husbands.
Yeah. Well, husbands are called to love their wives and to not be harsh with them. Mm-hmm. Wives are called to respect their husbands. Mm-hmm. A great way to show respect, obviously, is by honoring them and honoring their wishes. Now, my marriage, personally, I know that I have a good relationship with my husband. So I know that if we disagree on something, ultimately his word stands. Because I have to trust that he is doing what is best for our family in the name of Yahweh. But that being said, if I disagree with him, I will lovingly and kindly tell him I disagree with him. I will talk to him. I mean, you don't have to fight or argue. It doesn't have to be horrible. Mm-hmm. But you can lovingly tell them why you disagree or why you think that, that is the wrong way to go about things. And my husband hears me out. Mm-hmm. A husband who loves you will want to listen to you and will value your opinion.
That's what I want.
Yeah, and a husband who values your opinion, and that's another thing. I have to trust that he has heard my opinion and he has considered it and thought about it. And if he decides to go against what I believe, I have to believe that it's for the better. Mm-hmm. That being said, your husband answers for you one day. If you do something, that also falls on your husband. If your children do something, that falls on your husband. He has to answer for that. Your husband is your covering.
I didn't know that. Yeah. That's a lot of pressure.
So,
woo! In that respect, I'm glad I'm not a male.
I can just double check those verses, but your husband is responsible for his household. Mm-hmm. And so you have to believe that he's going to make the right choice for you. Mm-hmm. And, whenever you're dating, you have to consider these things. Is this man level-headed? Mm-hmm. Does he care about my thoughts? Does he care about my feelings? Is he trying to protect me? Being submissive to someone who is just a boyfriend or just a fiance even. Mm-hmm. Submitting to them is not you don't have to do that. Mm-hmm. like you can do
it's
that.
good to practice it.
Right.
Because I've never thought of the thing as, like, you go straight from dating, and then suddenly a switch clicks, and you're like,
exactly.
Whoa, submission!
But you are called to submit to your husband and to Yahweh. You're not called to submit to any other husband. Yeah. Or any other male at all. Mm-hmm. And I think that, using wisdom and discernment on what to submit to based on, what is right and wrong via scripture and, via Yahweh is more important. But submitting to your husband does not mean that you're a slave to him, but it means that you trust him and that you trust that he cares for you and that he's going to make the right decision for your good and that of your family. So I don't think that submissiveness in the sense of slavery is anywhere near what the picture of it is supposed to be. Yeah. Yahweh is first. Mm-hmm. And Yeshua is the covering of man. Mm-hmm. The man is the covering of the woman. So it even there's so much pressure on husbands. Oh, yeah. Their responsibility is so great to not think that your husband would have your best interest in mind. Mm-hmm. I don't think that that's respecting him. Because if he has to answer for these things, if he has to, for example, in Torah, it speaks of if a girl, a daughter, or a wife does something and she makes a contract of some kind with someone. Oh, yeah. And he hears about it, the father or the husband has the ability to go and break that contract. Mm-hmm. That's also true for spiritual contracts. That's also true for, in anything. If he has the ability to do that, that, again, that pressure, that amount of pressure of hey, this is this is for their good, or, they did something that is not for their good. Yeah, and I have the ability to do that. That's a lot of pressure. You have to believe that they are.
It also says that if he hears it and he does nothing about it, that's on him. Yeah. If he doesn't hear it and she goes through with it, then he didn't know. But if he hears it and he says, okay, she's good to do that, and it ends up being bad for her, or if that contract is something that's not pleasing to Yahweh, that's on him. Yeah. That's scary.
Yeah. And yeah, so men, I think men have a lot of bad names, bad connotations tied to them.
It's easy to forget what they do. Yeah. And what they have on their shoulders.
They're so strong. Yahweh makes them to be the stronger half, and they are, and that's okay. Women have strengths in their own ways, and men have their own strengths, and men have weaknesses and women have weaknesses. And I think that those things complement each other, and I think that finding the spouse that complements those things nicely is, the goal.
Difficult.
Yeah, it's difficult, but whenever you do, of course there will still be bumps in the road and things that you have to work out and figure out. But whenever you find those things and you learn how to work those together for good, it's really good. It's great for your children. It's great for your marriage. And you can have a really strong marriage that way. And I think just knowing that he's going to lead you in the right way and being able to trust in him and knowing that he trusts in you and trusts in your opinion and knows that he considers those things. I think that is the key in the whole missing, I don't want to submit thing, or I don't want to, that submitting might be hard.
Yeah. So. I definitely pray, and I know my mama prays a lot for it, because she prayed a lot, and and Yahweh gave Megan Jared, and I believe that he is that other part of that, because he respects her so much and loves her so much, and everybody can see that. Yeah. And he takes her opinion and he weighs it with his own. And sometimes they disagree, but I can see that they work it out and he respects her opinion. And I pray every day that I find that, and that my friends find that Abby does, because I know she's in Torah with me. And her boyfriend, Josiah, he has the beginnings of that. And I can see that because he loves her so much and that he respects her. And sometimes it's hard because I see Megan, I see Sarah, and I see Abby finding that in someone. And I haven't really yet. And I believe that Yahweh is pushing the patience on me and that test of patience, which I'm not very good at. but I'm learning to deal with. So in the meantime, I've been studying on how to be a good wife and how to be submissive to my husband, because that matters in the long run. Mm-hmm. I think God, or Yahweh, is building me up in my faith, letting me be independent in how He needs me to be before another person comes in.
Right.
He's trying to, the way I see it is He's trying to make me as close as that to that Proverbs 31 woman, so that when my future husband comes, he can do what he needs to do and I can do what I need to do, because maybe I'm not ready right now. Mm-hmm. Maybe these factors of just rebellion in me that I can see, even maybe I need to work on that. And I'm not a very patient person. I want the things to be done now. So it's definitely a test on my part. But I read this thing, I can't remember if it was a post on Facebook or something, or I think Abriella sent it to me. It says, I prayed for strength, and Yahweh sent me a struggle, a test. I prayed for knowledge, and He sent me a situation that I can learn from. And praying for a husband and everything may not be Yahweh's plan for me right now. Mm-hmm. And I'm starting to understand that and learn that more. But it's definitely a little bit challenging because I want to be happy. But I guess I have to find my own happiness first before I find it in someone else. You know what I mean?
Well, Yahweh is doing work in you, and He may be doing work in that person too. And it may not be time for that person, you know?
Yeah.
And I think praying for them, because He knows who they are, I think that praying for them is, super important.
We've always been told to pray for our future spouses. Yeah. I do that more now than I did as a little kid, because I'm like, ugh, ew, boys and cooties. I don't want to hear about it. And then now I'm like, please, Yahweh, help him, please.
Yeah.
Bring him to me.
Yeah, I think that you will. I think that He's right around the corner. You just gotta keep doing what you're doing and let Yahweh sanctify you more and more, and let Him make you more like Him. Mm-hmm. Have you ever heard the quote that says, "Be so hidden in Yahweh that the man has to go through Him to get to you"?
I have not. That's good though. Huh.
Yeah, I always think that that's so cute. Like, but
put that on a t-shirt. You know? I need that one. Okay, so we're getting towards the end of this episode. What I wanted to ask and what I wanted my listeners to hear is, do you have any advice for either people who are going through dating or are going through the start of marriage, just some advice for them that you've learned from being in marriage to Tyler? Because I can see some things that y'all do that I want to do whenever I have a husband. Don't cry. No, but as Megan had said in one of our last podcasts, we pick apart the people in the Torah and we find little things that we like about. Maybe it's an action, or maybe it's a word that they say, that you say that you love them more often than what we may be used to. So do you have any little things to say to anyone?
As far as dating is concerned, I would say don't settle. Don't settle just because you want marriage. So remember, all those things I said about, you have to believe that man, trusts you. You have to believe that he's doing what's best for you. To believe in that, you have to know that person, and you have to love them and know that they love you. And that's not just oh, I love you so much, you're amazing. That's would die for you, would do, would know that, if his if his choice is wrong, and it led to death, he would be okay with that because it meant good for you.
Mm-hmm. So romantic.
Don't settle. Don't settle for someone that you don't know that's going to happen, because you have a choice to some extent, I believe, in picking that spouse. Don't settle for someone that you don't think will consider your opinion and value you or think of you as more precious than rubies. Mm-hmm. You want someone who will do those things. So for sure, take your time, be patient, be prayerful, ask Yahweh for wisdom and discernment in dating. And I know that the desire of having a husband or having someone, especially with the whole age thing, you're like, oh, I'm getting older. I don't, I'm still not married. I'm still not engaged.
My time is ticking.
Yeah. And that, I think, is really a dangerous thought process whenever you are thinking of a spouse, because you could just be like, oh, well, this one's available and he treats me pretty good, so, like, why not get married? I think that is super dangerous, and I think that you should take your time, pray, consider those things, and let Yahweh lead you where he wants to lead you. Mm-hmm. Do
you have anything for newly married or just being married in general? Anything that you found about, I guess, Tyler, or about men in general that you've learned, or how to be a good Proverbs 31 wife in today's time?
Yeah, as far as marriage goes, marriage is not perfect. No marriage is perfect. No marriage doesn't have arguing or disagreements. Everyone has challenges. And, like, I can sit here and tell you, like, oh, everything has been perfect. The whole, what? Oh, how many years?
Don't 11? You dare lie on my podcast, Charity.
But they haven't. Like, we have had arguments. We have, been angry with each other. Me, more so, I get angrier, I think, than he does. And I think that he is very good at being kind to me when I'm angry. I am very quick to, like, he immediately forgives. He's like, I'll be like, I'm sorry. He's like, okay, I love you. And, like, just gives me a hug and a kiss. And, like, he's like that with everybody. He's always been that way. I admire that about him. But I'm like, I'm gonna need a minute. Like,
yeah.
I need a minute to, like, process things. I need a minute to, like, be mad. I just need to be mad.
Yeah.
And I think that the most important thing I can say whenever your marriage is facing disagreements is that you are a team, and that you are not fighting against each other, but you're fighting against the issue. Mm-hmm. Because whenever you start, like, attacking each other and it becomes personal, it hurts your marriage. Mm-hmm. It hurts you hurt each other, and, like, you can't take that back. Mm-hmm. But whenever you realize, like, hey, we have a problem and we need to get through it together, then it's more of a solution-based, disagreement. And it's not as much of an argument. I think that I wish that I would have known that earlier, and I wish I would have been trained to look at arguments like that. But that is something that is definitely helpful. Mm-hmm. And I think that making sure that, not nitpicking all the time, and, being an encouraging wife to your husband is so important. Encouragement goes so far in any marriage. I mean, regardless of what their love language is, or encouraging anyone, even as a husband encouraging a wife, like, it builds you up. And anytime that you're building up the other person, you feel appreciated, and you feel valued, and you feel like you're bringing something to the table. And, you always want to make the person who is, your team, you always want to make them feel valued. Yeah. And the last thing I would say is this. A lot of people think, like, marriage, relationships are 50-50. But I have found that is not true. Sometimes it's 80-20. Sometimes it's, 90-10 or 60-40. Like, sometimes the husband falls apart and he just needs his wife to love him. Mm-hmm. Or he's having a hard time. And sometimes the wife is, has her own problems and just needs the husband to, like, lean on. Mm-hmm. And that selfless love that, like, hey, this person isn't emotionally available or physically available to give me 50% of them right now. Like, I need to bring more to the table. I need to, like, do something that I don't usually do that they usually do. Yeah. Because they can't do that right now.
That definitely, I would love that portion, because I'll see in some areas, and it may usually it falls to the guy, but picking up where the spouse leaves off. Mm-hmm. So if you're in a bad state of mind for a week or something, doing the dishes, like, even once a day, or bringing home flowers or something, just like something little. My love language, I believe parts of it is gifts. And I always love whenever people bring things to me that they think would bring joy to me.
Yeah.
And not that I hope that my husband gives me gifts all the time, but if he sees that I'm in a bad mental state, or he sees that something's wrong with me, that he'll do the little things for me. Yeah. And I hope I can do that to him, for him, someday, you know?
Yeah.
And bringing up a point that you had said, I have always gotten the advice these days of never say divorce.
Right, yeah.
And because the fighting, as you said, your fight is with the problem, not with your spouse. Right. And I love that, because that would give you a good mindset of it never leads to divorce, because you know that
there's a solution.
There's a solution,
right.
Yeah. And Mama's always taught us that it should never be said, it should never be joked about, because once you get it in your mind, it's stuck there.
Yeah.
You know?
Satan uses that for sure. Like, he is like, oh, you thought about it. Well, what do I want to do? I want to rip it apart.
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
Let's just blow this thing wide open.
Okay, well, we have come to the end of this episode on a Proverbs 31, essentially, wife. I hope that you guys are having a good week this week. I am definitely having a good week. Tomorrow's my birthday, so definitely having a good week. Once again, thank you guys so much for listening. I know that I have a few people that listen to my podcast that I may not know, so I'm really excited that people actually listen to me. This is my way of spreading the news, and I really hope that I can continue doing so. Just to end it off, just want to say, Shalom, y'all!
Shalom, y'all!